So, Mum, why did you decide to homeschool?
Well, in a nutshell, because I really wanted to have real control over forming your worldview.
So why was control important?
Well, I'm old. I was born in the early 60s and right at the beginning of the sexual revolution. And I'm old enough to actually be able to remember a time when Western society had a cohesive Judeo-Christian worldview. And it didn't matter whether you were a believer or not, the general belief in the uniting belief in the society was a Judeo-Christian belief.
So when you were young, did people get married rather than just shift in?
Oh, absolutely. If you didn't get married instead of shifting in, that was considered living in sin.
Oh my gosh, we've come a long way.
Oh, yes.
We've come a very long way.
I remember when I was at primary school, there was this boy, and his parents were divorced. And it was like, oh, they're divorced. You know, it was just, that was radical when I was a child. Yeah, so I remember when I had a very happy childhood, and my parents, I hasten to add here, did not get involved with the sexual revolution at all. They were very, very devout Christians, and they really wanted to pass on their worldview because it was tremendously important to them. But as I was growing up, the world around us was starting to the society's view was fracturing. And it was fracturing more and more and disintegrating into a smorgasbord of ideas that you just pot-shotted and you picked what sort of ideas that you would like. No cohesive worldview at all. And I was watching this happen. And by the time that I was in my early 20s, things were so different. People were starting to shift in, not like they do now, but they were definitely starting. Marriage was going out. They were starting to shift in rather than get married. And there was just people. My father used to say years ago when he was a boy, it took a brave man to mow his lawn on Sunday when everybody else was going to church. But by the time I became 20, it took a brave person to be going to church while everybody else was mowing their lawn and that.
So you didn't get involved with all of this revolution either?
No, I didn't. But my sister did. I had a younger sister, and she chose to reject what my parents had taught us, and she ended up becoming very promiscuous and got involved with witchcraft.
And you know, we live in a society which says, you know, everyone should be free to make their own choices, and who's it going to hurt other than yourself? How much did your sister's choice affect you?
It was devastating, absolutely devastating. Because in the Western world, I do not believe there is any power in witchcraft at all. None at all. But this, you know, all these spells, my sister she got involved with a friend whose mother was a witch, and they ended up, my parents knew nothing about it. They just knew something had gone really wrong with her when she was about 11. And she told us later that she'd gone to this old abandoned quarry, and she and this girl had made some sort of sacrifice. I'm not sure what kind of sacrifice. I'm guessing maybe a bird or something.
To who?
Good question. I don't know, but it certainly wasn't to the Judeo-Christian God. So anyway, she got involved with this, and we didn't know at the time what had gone wrong. Mum tells a story about how my sister's teacher had asked her at a parent-teachers meeting, had something gone wrong with my sister. And she thought something had gone wrong in the home. And Mum said, we had a very settled home life. And Mum said, no, nothing's gone wrong. And she thought the teacher was very switched on. But at the time, she came home and she thought, oh, she's got it wrong this time. Mrs. Choate's got it wrong. But in later years, she wished that she could go back and ask her what she had seen that Mum had missed. And it wasn't until years later we found out that my sister had got involved with witchcraft. And the effect that had on the family, along with the promiscuity, was that although, like I say, I do not believe in the power of spells or undeserved curses or anything like that. What I do strongly believe in, and there's massive evidence for it, is if you have witchcraft enter into your family through any member, what it does bring is it does bring massive manipulation, narcissism, and selfishness. And when you get this cocktail of three things, what happens in your family group is there is a wedge is put between all the family members that over the years grows to such proportions it completely destroys the whole family. And
It sounds to me like you're saying that the fruit of your sister deciding to get involved with the sexual revolution and then pairing that with magic was very, very vile and very, very bitter. And it was not just fine for everyone else that she was doing her own thing.
No, it was devastating.
And this had a big effect on deciding to homeschool. Why?
Because I wasn't willing to lose a second family.
Yeah.
I lost all my, I had a fantastic childhood, a wonderful, wonderful, close-knit family. But because of this coming into it, eventually over time, I lost them all.
Mm.
And I wasn't willing to lose a second family, and I wasn't willing to see another generation destroyed by it, because I could see the insidious fingers of it wanting to take my children. So I thought, no man can make a choice for anybody else, because this is the free will. This is the importance of free will. Every single person is entitled to make their choice on it. But I thought about you kids. I thought, if you choose to go like my sister, if you choose to throw it out, which I can do nothing about, at least I'm not going down without a fight, and I'm not having you all go through apathy, and because the whole society is disintegrating into this big hodgepodge of chaos. I thought I'm not going down without a fight. And because of that, it was very important to me to form the worldview, to form the mind, to encourage an environment where the spirit would be free to grow in that. And I didn't see how I could do that through sending you to a secular school. And
why didn't you choose a religious school?
Because I didn't trust the church either.
Good answer. You know too much history. Good answer.
I mean, the church has got a terrible track record, and some of the most controlling environments can be religious environments, and using parts of the Bible and that. And besides that, I felt that the Bible was very clear how I should be passing it on. It was very clear. It says, as if you want to train your little children, it says, teach them the ways of the Lord as you rise up, as you sit down, as you walk along the road, basically life. How can you do this if your children, the best hours of the day are off at some secular school, which are teaching things which you're opposed to?
And you felt a religious school was also going to take, it sounds like you're saying you didn't want to lose the middle of the day to anyone.
No, I didn't. Because you were such a talker and you drove me insane. But it started, first of all, because I have to say, as you know, I was absolutely opposed to homeschooling because I didn't want to do it. And there was a movement about that time in New Zealand when a few pioneering people in the church were starting to not want to put their children into school because they could see the secularism that was being put in there. So they asked me, was I going to do it? And I said, no, I wasn't. And I was looking forward to having some time by myself. And you were about 4 at the time. And I put you into, what they call in New Zealand kindergarten. They call it kindergarten, but, it's
preschool.
It's a preschool. I think that kindergarten in America is something a little bit older. But it was a preschool. It was a preconditioning for kids to go to school at about 5. And I put you in there, and there was all these activities. They had lots of activities. They had sand pits and they had water play, and they just had lots and lots of different things. And you're a kid that I would have, highly strung, and I would put sort of maybe have even been bordering on a bit like ADHD sort of thing. And when I took you there, I noticed, and I dropped you off for a couple of hours. It was about 3 afternoons a week. I noticed as I hung around for a little bit watching you that you would rush and do this for a little bit for 2 seconds, and then rush and do this for 2 seconds, and then all over the place. You were just all over the place. And I found myself sort of sneaking around their library sort of thing, just looking at their books and thinking, well, what sort of ideology is in these books that they're teaching, And I was really worried about that, because some of them were just nice little books like Spot, the little dog that goes for a walk, but there were other things that they were starting to, that it was the beginning, and we saw quite clearly the seeds of what we knew was going to grow into a different ideology that we didn't want.
A different worldview.
And just because something's a small seed doesn't mean to say it's not going to grow, and we could see the direction. So this was going on for a little while, and it wasn't the joy that I thought it would be, because I'd put Rachel down for a sleep. She was a baby, and then I'd have to wake her up and I'd go and get you and stuff like that. And what really, really troubled me the most was that you continuously talked. It absolutely drove me nuts. But you would come out with these, during the day, you would come out with these weird sort of things and these statements. And so long as you were in my home, around with me, I could trace the thread back to work out what was going on in your head and what I needed to talk to, because you were actually a very curious and very intuitive spiritual child. And so some of the questions were stupid questions, but some of them were important things that I needed to talk to right in the moment. It was like a real teachable moment. And I noticed that after you went to kindergarten, there would be like a gap of 2 hours during the day when you went to kindergarten, on the day that you went to kindergarten, that if you came out with obscure things, I didn't know where you were coming from, and I couldn't work it out. And I'd say to you, oh, what did you do at kindergarten today? And you'd just say, oh, stuff. And you never talked about it, and I found that really strange. I had met a friend at the supermarket, and I was just coming home from the kindergarten, and she said to me, oh, hello, Wendy, and she said, oh, here, so-and-so's decided to homeschool. It was another one of our friends, and she said, are you going to homeschool? And I said, oh, heck no, I'm not homeschooling. It's a horrible idea. I don't want to ruin my home. I don't want, sharks on my fridge and those hideous plastic stuffed paper fish and everything like that. I'm not homeschooling. She said, no, neither am I. I said, well, we had a real fun little hymn of hate standing at the supermarket as to how we were not going to homeschool. And when I got home, I was still on a high. The endorphins were just really raging. I was on this real high about how much I hated homeschooling and wasn't going to do it. And my sister rang, and she said, this is another sister, not the one that got involved with witchcraft. I've got 2 sisters. And she rang, and she said, hi, Wendy. And she said, how you started talking, and I was still on a roll about hating the homeschooling. So I started to talk to her about homeschooling, about how hideous it would be homeschooling, and she didn't have children, but she thought that would be absolutely true. So we were having this wonderful little, I was extending this wonderful little hymn of hate. And then I started to say to her, but, well, I can sort of see why you do it, though, because, I can see why some people would be kind of interested, because, it's a pain having to go in the afternoons, and I have to wake up Rachel, and I'm really worried about what they might be teaching, and I can't work out where Ruth's at, and there's big gaps in my thing, and she seems to be having a personality change. And when kids go to school, it's I've heard a lot of people say that they will listen to the teacher rather than their parents if there's a conflicting issue and everything. So I just started to list all of these things that I could see could be an advantage. And it was a monologue, pretty much. And the amazing thing is that at the end of the conversation, this monologue, I suddenly knew without a shadow of a doubt I had to homeschool. So this is quite shocking. So that night, when we were sitting up in bed, I was talking to Ian, and we had never even discussed me homeschooling because I was so vehemently opposed to it. I didn't want to do it. But we had discussed how when our kids went to school, we had decided he was going to get on every board and he was going to be really involved with all of the thing to try and sort of be a part of the decision making about what sort of things, ideologies that they would be teaching at school. And I said to him nervously, I told him about what had happened and how I'd had this conversation. And I said to him sort of nervously, I'm thinking about homeschooling. What would you think about that? And he just looked at me and he said, Wendy, he said, if you would homeschool, he said, that would be such a relief to me. That would be such a weight off my shoulders. And I just looked at him and I said, I never knew you feel like that. And he looked at me and he said, I didn't know it either until this exact moment. And so that was the point where there was like this tremendous conviction was born in me that I had to take because of the times that we lived in and because I had something very important to pass on. I had to take hands-on control of all education because I didn't think I could get it done any other way. Believe me, if I thought that there was another way, I would have done it because I didn't want to.
You mentioned that through your younger sister getting involved with witchcraft and promiscuous behaviour, you ended up losing your whole family. But you're clearly still on talking terms with family members back then. It seems to me what you're saying is that these things take time to grow and you can't really leave it till the teenage years because obviously there was a point where you did have that family. It took you a while to lose that family. Did you have an inclination you were going to lose your whole family?
Not at first. I lost the first sister. The relationship completely broke down when I was probably in my mid-20s. And then I lost the second sister when I was probably in my early 40s.
But you must have had an inclination you were going to lose your whole family through this issue because you said that's the reason you decided to homeschool.
Well, as you know, there had been witchcraft in the family before, a previous generation,
unfortunately,
two previous generations. And my mother's mother used to read teacups, and apparently she was very good at it. And she was Scottish, and they had her family was steeped in superstition with the pixies and the fairies and stuff like that.
Total bondage. And Mum said her mother, a doctor called her neurotic, so, there was big problems with my mother's mother. And my mother was actually physically and emotionally abused, but she was also very loved. It was a strange sort of thing. And Mum tells a story, and she said she's amazed that her mother had all of this patience. But when Mum was small, she was about 3, she would say to Mum, "Oh, Shirley, what would you like the fairies to make you tonight?" And so Mum would say, "Oh, I'd like a little table and chairs or something like that." And then she'd go to bed, and all night her mother, well, not all night, but that evening, her mother would make whatever it was that Mum had requested into little plasticine little figurines. And when Mum woke up in the morning, there would be the little figurines that the fairies had brought to Mum. How this, which kind of sounds all right, what's the big harm in that? But the big harm was that this tremendous narcissism, selfishness, and manipulation had entered into my mother's family through this. And my mother's family there were 4 daughters. They came out from Scotland to New Zealand. And my mother's family were always warring and always feuding. And Mum said it was very hard to keep track with who they were speaking to, because her mother was speaking to one sister sometime, and then she was not speaking to that sister, and then all the kids were not allowed to speak to those sisters because, the mothers had fallen out, and then sometimes we're getting on, and then they weren't getting on with Granny, and there was all this fighting and this feuding was going on, and it was coming on, and it got so terrible that
my mother was on the verge, when I was born, my mother was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. And it was so terrible that she and my father packed up secretly, and they basically ran away. They sold their house secretly. They were living in the family town back then, and they sold up their house secretly and sold up everything, and then they shifted right to the other end of the country because they figured that Mum's mother would not be able to get through the big city, Auckland there, wouldn't be able to get up to the other end to get hold of them, because Mum was on the point of, she wasn't actually suicidal, but she was in some ways in just as bad a position because she had decided to give up on life. And it was really my father, who was a very strong man, who said, no, you're not giving up on life. And then he had taken very big steps to get her out of the situation because she was under so much control and manipulation with her mother. And they did through prayer and everything, that because my mother found the Lord when she was 11.
So I don't understand. How does this tie into you knowing you were going to lose, if you were going to lose your kids? Because are you saying that you knew you would end up losing your whole family through this witchcraft thing because it happened to Grandma?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. So you could extrapolate out.
I could.
Because this was
I could
not the first generation.
No, I could extrapolate it out because this was at least the third generation that this had happened through the witchcraft.
So you had seen it happen.
Yes.
You were watching it happen.
Yes.
And you were determined it would not happen.
Yes.
Okay.
To the best of my ability.
To the best of your ability.
Yeah.
So was it worth it?
100%. I would do it all again. I'd do it all again. And
was it hard?
Very hard. Very hard. And well, when I say was it very hard fighting the witchcraft, that's what I'm saying was very hard. The homeschooling, the weight of responsibility was hard, but in hindsight, when I look back, it was the easiest path for me. It was easier than any other path. And the results have been so worthwhile. If I could do the homeschooling, again from what I know now, I would do exactly the same thing again. I just would worry about it less.
So it seems to me that you think that it had a huge effect on what your children have become.
Oh, absolutely. Because, and I put a lot of it down to the literature that we did and we didn't have in the family.
I mean, books are so important to us.
Absolutely. So because this is what you're doing, it's really stories, stories and literature, that family stories, Bible stories, your worldview stories, and society stories is really what's building the framework of your understanding how the world and the universe works. And so I was very intentional about that, because your father and I were very intentional because we had something to pass on. So the Bible was the whole bedrock of understanding how the world and people and even universes beyond us and life after death, how that works. That's your whole framework. But within that, there were other frameworks of the smaller things, books that we could have. And one thing I decided absolutely is we were not having any magic in our house. We had no magic books. We had no Disney films, nothing like that. We had nothing, because I didn't want to waste you children's ability to believe in unseen things on lies or things that were going to bring tremendous destruction into the family. And I wanted you to know that no matter how pretty a little fairy is, with its little wand and everything like that, that if you see a little fairy, a little fairy, you're not looking at a nice little thing that's going to grant you your wishes. No, you're looking at something that's going to absolutely destroy your whole family. It's going to destroy every relationship, and it's going to come between you and God. And I wanted you to know that, and I know in certain terms. And the way to do that was to actually be able to control at the point that the mind was being formed and the spirit was being formed at that very basic level, to be able to interpret, these things and set up a real good basis of understanding. So, I didn't think I could do it any other way.
So, to parents who have children and they want to get that faith, they want to have the best shot they can at getting their faith passed on, because obviously it's ultimately free choice. What would your advice be?
Oh, I would advise homeschooling if you can, and not just and very intentional homeschooling. One of the things I did notice amongst many people who did homeschool, because where we were, there were quite a lot that did it. It was like a little microcosm in New Zealand, and for many that started off with it very important to pass on the Judeo-Christian faith, very quickly it often got eclipsed with the mechanics of academia and training the mind, the intellect. And so they very quickly usually got bogged down with reading and that, and
competition.
Yeah, and competition, and it got sidelined. And I tried never to do that, with the result that I found many times that our academics were, well, we were the worst. We were the worst. Because I didn't have the energy for both. Because character training was so important, and I would always jettison the academics when faced with a choice of energy as to whether I put it into the academics or whether I put it into the character. I would always choose the character rather than the academics, because I figured you could learn the academics later, but what is the point of having a real genius, a wicked genius when they arise? I mean, what does that mean? It just means that they can kill people more efficiently or something like that. So I didn't see the point of that. And I thought that when I was doing it, I really thought I was a terrible teacher, and I was no good with it and that. And that if I could manage better, I'd be able to do both. But I think in hindsight, from the perspective of being older, I really think that it's designed like that. God designs it like that, that every parent is actually given a choice what's really important, because you can't do it all. And for me personally, the character and building the worldview was the most essential, and I'm glad I chose it.
Well, I think that all four of us we're so fortunate that you did it, and we do believe in God, and we do all respect the Bible, and I think you're a wonderful mother, and I really appreciate it, and thank you so much for telling me this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.